Hey everyone, it's Mike, and I want to do a quick video to cover what Memoirs tells us about Paul and John making a deal with the devil. I've been asked this question a number of times, and I have discussed it in shows, but I thought it might be worthwhile to do a standalone video on the topic. On page 369 of Memoirs, and note the page number is 3, 6, and 9. And when we add 3 plus 6 plus 9, we get 18, and of course 1 plus 8 equals 9. From my presentation on Billy's McCartney 3 album, I explained that the number 3 is considered a direct link to Source or the universe. 6 represents the strength within ourselves as well as the number of man in the physical realm, and 9 is in accordance with moving on from the past, which can also be described as transformation, change, and endings. This is why the persona of Paul McCartney is linked to the number 9. He represents the graven Christ figure who brings about a new religion referred to as Paulism, which is Luciferian based. And the term Paulism has numerology of 10, which represents completion and thus new beginnings. 3, 6, and 9 are considered powerful, higher dimensional energy influencing other numbers and linked to the creation and existence of the universe. In vortex math, 3, 6, and 9 represent a vector between the third and fourth dimensions. So we can see that page number 369 from Memoirs has very occulted meaning. Let's read page 369 and see what it says. The man, who is unnamed and I'm assuming a Luciferian priest, told John and Paul that their show would never be a global sensation until they ceremonially enact the sacrifice and pray to Lucifer for his influence over the whole world. He told them that Lucifer is the god of this world and that this power surpasses all others. With that idea in mind, that night, 24 October 1963, John and Paul said words, most likely without taking them seriously enough, promising that they would each sacrifice to quench Lucifer's appetite, or something along that foolish line. Now, this is something we see in Memoirs throughout the book. Billy via Tom will tell us what I believe to be the truth, and then follow with a sentence that contradicts or plays down what was previously stated. This, in my opinion, was done in order to create plausible deniability. We will encounter another example of this in a moment. The book goes on to say, I heard John discuss it with Vernon E. Mosher. Vernon Mosher was one of Kenneth Anger's Satanists. Anger is a disciple of Crowley. Memoirs continues, attributing the imminent death to the oath, Paul cries, I said something wrong, and this is a reference to the song Yesterday. The narrative continues with, understand that what followed would have most likely happened anyway. Fate was already for them. Now, the magic began a week later, on Halloween 1963, when they returned with a triumphant entry. So again, Billy links Paul's death to the oath, and then backs off and says that what followed would have most likely happened anyway. Fate was already for them. The phrasing is interesting. How was it that fate was already with them? How was this known? I think it means the Beatles were on Tavistock's radar, meaning groomed and handled for a long time before they were, quote, discovered. Billy then shifts back to the importance of the pact by stating, now the magic began a week later on Halloween 1963. And of course, note the day is Halloween, which is an occulted holiday. My opinion is fate and magic in these types of situations are not mutually exclusive and both are part of the grand design, meaning one does not work without the other. The narrative goes on to say, crazed fans made a considerable spectacle of themselves at London Airport. Ed Sullivan, as it happened, witnessed the scene firsthand. He thought he was there by fate. His plane had been delayed. Here, Billy is telling us the connection between Ed Sullivan and the Beatles was scripted to happen. This is very similar to what Dr. Coleman tells us in his book on the Committee of 300. Memoirs continues, he enjoyed what he saw and was sure America would enjoy experiencing it too. On 11 November, at the Delmonico Hotel in New York, Brian Epstein met with Ed Sullivan to negotiate the now famous U.S. television appearances that occurred 3 months later in February 1964. All went as orchestrated. Please note that November 11th is another occulted date, and recall the Beatles' Rubber Soul sessions concluded on November 11th, 1965. So page 369 in Memoirs has occult significance, and therefore the packaging of the words with the page number is not coincidence. Once we strip out Billy's plausible deniability language, page 369 tells us that biological Paul and John Lennon entered into a Faustian bargain on October 24, 1963. Again, to quote Memoirs, John and Paul said words, most likely without taking them seriously enough, promising that each would sacrifice to quench Lucifer's appetite. It should also be noted that the number of days between the release of the Beatles' first album, Please Please Me, on March 22, 1963, and the date of the pact in October of the same year is exactly 216 days, which reduces to the number 9. Also, March 22nd is symbolic of the occult number 322, which most people associate with Skull and Bones. I will talk more about this number in a moment. Now let's take a look at 2 other key dates around the Satanic Pact and the release of Please Please Me. The number of days between the release of Please Please Me on March 22, 1963, and the Beatles' arrival in the United States on February 7, 1964, is 322 days. So here we have the number 322 again, which reduces to 7, a number representing enlightenment. 322 can also represent 3 times 22, which calculates to the occult number of 66. When we add 6 plus 6, we get 12, and 1 plus 2 equals 3. The number 3 is also represented by 777, which is referred to as the lightning bolt of creation through the Kabbalah tree of life. 777 is also represented by the number 21. We get this by adding 7 plus 7 plus 7, or 3 times 7. And for those familiar with the Bible, 322 is also an occulted reference pointing to Genesis 3:22. The number of days between the pact on October 24, 1963, and the Beatles' arrival in America on February 7, 1964, is 106 days. 106 days also reduces to the number 7. It should also be pointed out that the day of February 7, 1964, reduces to 9/11. February is the 2nd month, and when we add the 7th day, we get the number 9. And when we add the digits comprising the year 1964, we get 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 4, which equals 20, and reduces to 2. 2 is comprised of 1 plus 1, or 2 ones, or 11. An easier way to calculate the year to reduce to 11 is to zero out the number 9, since in numerology, 9 has the same effect as 0. Therefore, when we add 1 plus 0 plus 6 plus 4, we can more easily see the number 11. So the Beatles' arrival in the U.S. was a 9/11 event. 9/11 events are put into play as a means to bring about major transformative change within our societies and cultures. The number 7, along with 77 and 777s, is very prominent with the Beatles' 1962 through 1966 period. During this time, which is the Biopole era, the Beatles released 7 albums, which included 77 original album tracks. When we add in the 20 cover songs released on the first 7 albums, again, this would be Please Please Me through Revolver, we have a total song count of 97. 9 plus 7 equals 16, and 1 plus 6 equals 7. So we can see the first 7 Beatle albums have the number 7 firmly embedded into the equation. As mentioned earlier, in occult circles, the number 7 is associated with enlightenment and illumination. The Beatles were designed to enlighten or illuminate the world to the spiritual philosophy of Luciferianism. Here's a clip from an I Am a Phony video depicting how Paulism is in a battle with Christianity.
They burned their records and spit on their images. But before they burned the records, they had to buy them.
We meant more to kids than Jesus did. I was just saying it as a fact. I was using expressions on things that I just read.
The Passover plot speculates that the Bible is a hoax and that Jesus didn't die on the cross. Jesus survived, and in order to create a new religion with himself as the Messiah, he made people believe that he'd risen from the dead.
He said to me once that the children of 2000 will be listening to the Beatles.
By 2012, the masses will be where we are today, and Paul should be Jesus by then.
By 2012, the masses will be where we are today, and Paul should be Jesus by then.
Some people have asked me why the pact came after the Beatles were already famous. I will give you my theory. The Beatles were not yet the phenomenon they would become at the time of the release of Please Please Me. This was a period when Tavistock, EMI, and George Martin were setting the table for what would become known as Beatlemania. So the strategy was to introduce the lads to a worldwide audience before coming to America in 1964 when Beatlemania kicked into high gear. Having the Beatles, quote, conquer America and thus the 9/11 stamp upon their arrival was a top priority of Tavistock. So I believe in order to further entice the lads into playing their part in the psychological operation, in other words, to pull them in deeper, they gave them a taste of the fame and fortune in order to secure their commitment under the guise of free will. What group of young 20-year-olds is going to turn down that level of success? Not many. Of course, the controllers knew this would be the likely outcome and then presented the pact to Paul and John after priming the pump, and the deal was cut. The pact was necessary in order for the controllers to consummate the deal with Lucifer. So the occultists had to offer up a sacrificial lamb to their god, and Paul was the primary offering. I know this is very dark and hard to believe, but I do think this is a possible scenario. And to conclude, I will leave you with a clip of Marilyn Manson where he discusses the effect of Satanism on his life. Thanks for listening.
There's this book called the Necronomicon, which has incantations in it that if you read, you will bring about the apocalypse. And I think you can create your own demons. But I think that you can also foolishly invite those into your life. I think that that is a dangerous path to go down. So the very first day of public school, a guy named John, who was the cool guy who smoked cigarettes and wore a denim jacket, just beat me up for no reason because he said I was looking at his girlfriend. I'm just standing there petrified, and he punched me in the face. That's not a really good memory. That haunts me. But so I, maybe just out of not wanting to get beat up over and over again, tried to make friends with John by trading him my mom's diet pills in exchange for not beating me up, bonding over the love of the same type of music, which at the time was Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, all of the greats, you know. And I ended up a week or so later spending the weekend at this guy's house because his parents were out of town. And I think his intention was to beat me up more, but I thought maybe I was going to, you know, change, make amends, or, you know, like identify with this guy. It was just foolish. He lived in an area in Ohio, Canton, Ohio, that was very still in development. his house had a barn, but it was a gigantic lot of land. It was about the size of a football field. We went to his place, and he said, "You want to see something scary?" And it's almost like in Creepshow or The Twilight Zone or whatever. So we trekked to the barn. You know, he tried to make everything seem very mysterious. I know that that was part of the cool guy jean jacket persona of trying to be the evil sort of kid that was the dangerous guy that everyone's afraid of. We get to the barn. He's just like, let me show you something, but you can't tell my brother. It was like the biggest thing.
Come on, man, let's go.
We get to the top of this loft, and at the top of it was some sort of really makeshift satanic altar. There was just rotting carcasses.
Stop bringing the ball!
We both got really scared, and that was the most supernatural thing ever. We get to the top of this loft, and at the top of it was some sort of really makeshift satanic altar. There were dead pigeons, dead rabbits, and it's one thing to, like, you're a kid and you know, step on a frog or you shoot a bird with a pellet gun, but this was like animals cut open and their rotting carcasses hanging and blood everywhere and blood soaked into the hay. And I remember him telling me, "I've showed you this.
You can't ever
Tell my brother or you're dead." I'm already scared, and that's when he broke out this book called the Necronomicon.
All right, I want you to read this.
At that point already, you know, I think without even involving ghosts, we're dealing with a situation that, you know, is obviously unsettling.
Come on, man, read it. Read it. Read the book.
And then we stopped,
Gotta go.
and the brother that he had, his older brother, pulls up, and it's with the bright lights. He's got his brights on. Just gets out of the car, noise is playing.
John, you better not be in there.
Okay, if this guy, John, was cool with his denim jacket, this guy was like the Jolly Green Giant of his brother, because he had a bigger denim jacket and he was really tall. We both got really scared because I think that this guy believed in things that were not good to believe in.
Come on.
We ran out of the barn and decided we were going to take this new piece of literature, the Necronomicon, and we were going to go read it. And for all I know, the guy was just trying to mess with me more. And so I did it, because that's what you do when you're a kid. In front of us, it's a forest, a woods. So we start foolishly just lurking into the woods, because there was a path. Not very far, there's a clearing, and there had been a house. And I don't know if it was a previous housing development, but it was, for the most part, either unfinished or decimated, because it was just the frame. And, of course, the only legitimate structure was the cellar door. Not a basement, but a cellar door.
All right, let's go.
Of course, John made me go down there and said, "You're going to go down there and you're going to read these incantations by Bic light."
Stop, come on, stop.
It was dark. I don't even think it was really a basement. I have no idea. It just wasn't a good idea. So I went down these really rotted stairs, and, you know, there's dripping sounds. Handprints on the walls. I could hear whispering or talking. And at first I thought it was my friend talking to me. He was scared, and I don't know if he was trying to work me up.
Right. Read the book. Read it, come on, man. Read it. Read it.
And I'm standing with the lighter, shaking, and it's of course burning my thumb, and I'm trying to read through the pages, and that just sounds like the worst thing you could possibly do at that point.
Read the book.
Fresh out of Christian school, I had read the Bible enough to know that this isn't good.
Bright light of nights, mistress of the gods.
This was the point where I was quite convinced that tonight the end of my world was going to happen. I believe in the fact that there is energy, and if you mess with it, something can happen.
To the land of no return.
And then in the middle of it, we both got really scared because we stopped. I could hear it talking, and it was very scary. It was people talking, the whispering that I heard. It was something along the lines of, "Do you believe in Satan?"
Open the door that I may answer. Open the door that I may answer. Now read the book. Open the door that I may answer. Open the door that I may answer.
I dropped the book, dropped the lighter, and we ran in fear. There's no explanation for it other than that there was something supernatural involved. Something that really had a presence of evil. So we get back to his place finally, exhausted. My head's still reeling from the whole book, and this was very unnatural, and it scared me. It made me feel like I created something by reading the book. We had clearly gone messing with things that we shouldn't have messed with. I mean, there's just things that you shouldn't bother with unless you're prepared to, you know, face the consequences. The next day, I said, let's go find that book and let's get it back, because I think that we have unleashed something terrible. So during the daytime, we went back through the whole trek, and none of it seemed scary during the daytime. We get back to where the woods were, and we follow the path, and there's a clearing, you know, where we saw the structure, the house and the cellar. And there was nothing there. It just didn't exist. It was gone. And no one has an explanation for it. The fact that it disappeared, like it was some sort of evil oasis in the middle of the night, I think was directly related to our behavior. And that was the most supernatural, strange thing that I've ever in my life experienced. Myself have underestimated the power of the occult to this day. I would go back to Ohio right now and look for it, but I know that it won't be there. I think that I've turned into a worse monster than anything that I could have dreamed of, because that became my life, and I don't think that there's any other explanation for it.